Hello everyone, and welcome to our UDL hack video on Universal Design for Learning, Assistive Technology, and Instructional Technology. So these terms often kind of get confused, and understanding exactly where the boundary is sometime between one and the other can sometimes be confusing. So we've created this quick little video as a little bit of a primer to help us with that. All right. First thing to know is that several of these have very specific definitions. Universal Design for Learning has a very clear and established definition. It is a research-based framework about creating multiple means of representation, action and expression, and engagement to support students and reduce barriers to learning. Assistive technology also has a very clear definition, which we'll look at in just a second. But instructional technology is kind of a big, broad category of things, all right? So, and it has less of a firm definition. So kind of talking through all of this might be helpful for some of us. So this is the definition for assistive technology. I realize I'm in it a little bit here, so I'm going to try to squeeze out of your definition. So there you go. But assistive technology is, according to the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA 2004, assistive technology is defined as any item, piece of equipment, or product system, whether acquired commercially, off the shelf, modified, or customized. That covers a lot of things, doesn't it? That is used to increase, maintain, or improve functional capabilities of individuals with disabilities. All right? So you can see there, that's really going to cover a lot of things, right? So how do we make that clear in our head? If you create something special to meet that need for a student, that could be who has a disability, that could be an assistive technology. You could use off-the-shelf technology, let's say a Chromebook with some accessibility features to improve the functional capabilities of an individual with a disability. There are lots of ways that this could come about, and we'll talk about a few here in a minute. So let's go to the definition of Universal Design for Learning. The best place to learn about Universal Design for Learning is at CAS.org. These are the Universal Design for Learning guidelines. Starts with multiple means of engagement, then multiple means of representation, and then multiple means of action and expression. All right? And each one of those big three principles there at the top has three guidelines underneath it. And each one of those guidelines has these little checkpoints that can really help us as we're thinking about our lesson design and creating learning experiences that have little to no barriers. All right? So the legal definition of Universal Design for Learning in the law, as you can see here in a second, I'm going to pull it up from the CAS website, which again is the best place to learn about it. But UDL is referenced many times in the law, and here is its definition. UDL means a scientifically valid framework for guiding educational practice that A, provides flexibility in the ways information is processed, is presented, in the ways students respond or demonstrate knowledge and skills, and in the ways students are engaged. And B, reduces barriers in instruction, provides appropriate accommodations, supports, and challenges, and maintains high achievement expectations for all students, including students with disabilities and students who are limited English proficient. All right, and that was put into law in the Higher Education Opportunity Act, and its legal definition hasn't changed much since then. All right, or really at all since then. But it has started to spread far beyond just the United States. It is now being implemented in Australia, New Zealand, several European countries. The guidelines recently got translated into several different languages as well, so it really is spreading near and far. So back to those are our UDL guidelines. So now let's kind of look at this relationship here. We've got Universal Design for Learning, Assistive Technology, and Instructional Technology. There was a great article a while back by Dave Eddyburn, like 2010, Universal Design for Learning and Assistive Technology, two sides of the same coin. I kind of think of this as three overlapping circles in a Venn diagram. So let's take a couple of potential examples, all right? So let's start with, what if I just use an iPad to have my students look up information on the internet? And the only way that they can do that is to use the iPad for this assignment. That's probably an example of instructional technology, I would argue, because I've got my little iPad here, and it is fulfilling just one function. Now, if I allowed my students to use an iPad, I'll give me another little iPad here, and I realize it's not the world's best iPad, to answer a writing assignment. You could either choose to write it out by hand, or you could choose to use the text-to-speech features on an iPad to write out your assignment. Then that would probably be a good example of Universal Design for Learning. If I took this same iPad and specifically planned to give it to a student with a disability to address their challenges with writing because they were a student with a reading disability, and I was working on written composition, I would have that student use the text-to-speech features to support that student's need, and I would write a plan for that, and it would, in that case, be functioning as an assistive technology. Okay? And realistically, something could be in between here, depending on how we were using it. Something could be actually kind of qualifying for all three of those, depending on what was happening. What's important about understanding these is the context and your intentionality matters. So just because you're using an iPad or any other piece of technology doesn't make it Universal Design for Learning. It's really about the lesson design choices that you've made. Is this device providing either another means of engagement, another means of action and expression, or another means of representation? All right, let's go with another example here. So as you can see, I'm using a little interactive whiteboard app right this second called Doceri. And I have my little image that I've created in another piece of software, and I'm using this as my interactive whiteboard. All right. It will also do screen recording. But let's say I'm a teacher here in the front of the classroom, and I am using this to explain and go through basically what would amount to my slideshow. In that case, my slideshow is probably, in using this projector and this whiteboard app, is probably instructional technology. Pretty straightforward. Now, let's say I designed this lesson to have more of my students using this interactive whiteboard app. In that case, maybe they can create and answer the questions for my class using the screencasting and recording here in this app called Doceri. And that would be one of the means that they could express their content knowledge. In that case, this is probably one of the ways I'm supporting Universal Design for Learning in this lesson that I'm designing. Because some of my students can record, let's say, the start of the Second World War using this screencasting tool. All right, next up, with Doceri again, there are options where it could function as an assistive technology. So let's say one of my students has a mobility challenge and cannot reach my interactive whiteboard at the front of the room. I could bring them Doceri here on my tablet, and they could answer questions just like a student who could walk up and reach up to the interactive whiteboard. And let's say my student's in a wheelchair, they could use this to answer questions up on the interactive whiteboard without the challenge of reaching up. So in that case, it's an improving functional capability, so it would function as an assistive technology. And last one here, I'm presenting my lesson here to all of you wirelessly, as you can see. And I'm doing that with a piece of software called Reflector 2 by a company called Air Squirrels. And so possibly I'm a teacher who just likes to have the ability to walk around my classroom. I can walk around with this, no wires, no strings attached. I'm not Pinocchio. I can walk around my classroom and use my number one superpower, which is proximity control. The closer I am to my students, surprisingly, the better they act. In that case, this probably would be an instructional technology. I'm just teaching with my interactive whiteboard app or any other app on my mobile device, and I'm walking around with it, and I'm able to teach wirelessly. That's probably just instructional technology. I could also use this to support multiple means of engagement. So instead of having my students walk around the classroom, I could have my students and answer questions on my interactive whiteboard. Projecting wirelessly could become a great tool for one student to answer a math question, have it projected up on the board, and then pass it to the next student, and so on and so forth. Finding some ways that everyone can be engaged and be excited about interacting with the lesson, and my iPad's traveling around the room, which causes less disruption than 20 to 25 students always traveling around the room to do that. And then with the ability to project this wirelessly with my interactive whiteboard app, if I had a student who had some mobility challenges, again, it would qualify as an assistive technology if they were using Reflector 2 or something similar to project their information onto the board. They could also have a couple of students showing their mobile apps or their Chromebooks using this Reflector 2 at the same time. So I might have two students projecting both of their content up at the board at the same time and passing those around, and that type of collaboration might be a great way to get to support multiple means of engagement with Universal Design for Learning. So again, it really depends on how we're using these tools in some ways to determine whether they are Universal Design for Learning, assistive technology, or instructional technology. And most importantly, what I would encourage everyone is not to spend too much time on this. It's the least important thing you'll probably do, is trying to figure out whether something fits exactly in this part, or exactly in this part, or exactly in this part, or just here, or just there, or just here, or here, for this part of UDL, or for this multiple means of representation, or multiple means of engagement. Design lessons that engage your students, that use a broad mix of technology, that support Universal Design for Learning and multiple means of representation, action and expression, and multiple means of engagement. Make sure that you're meeting the assistive technology needs of any of your students with disabilities, and be confident in using and learning to use the instructional technology that you have and that will become available to you in the future. All of those things are much more important than focusing on which thing goes exactly where. because that can be just too overwhelming. So understand that these are different concepts and different aspects, but they are very related topics. And that's the most important takeaway, I think, for all of us as educators. Best of luck, and thanks for watching our UDL hack and discussion about Universal Design for Learning, assistive technology, and instructional technology. Thank you for coming.